This country is home to the world's oldest operating university and commercial bank. Roads appeared first on these lands, as well as the most important cultural revolution in history. And today, this place is known for some of the most beautiful and expensive sports cars and fashion items. In fact, Italy is one of the originators of the modern world, starting from popularizing coffee, pizza, pasta, and wine, and now also with technology, art, and sports. But what makes this country special? Why will she never become a world leader? And where and how are the Italians going today? This is what Italy looks like from the outside. A single state with the third largest population in the European Union, 58 million people, and officially 91% of its inhabitants are, of course, Italians. But if you dig deeper, you'll find that Italy is actually made up of 20 completely different regions. Look at the economy of the wealthy Lombardy with Milan as its capital. Now compare it with the homeland of the Mafia, Sicily, where everything is at the level of Barbados. Italy is further divided into 107 provinces and 8,000 communes, with the largest, Lazio, or Rome, at 2.7 million people, and the smallest of Montauban, there are only 32 people. Each commune has its own head, the mayor, the municipal police. They independently manage their communal property, and in Italian, there is such a thing as campanile, literally committed to one city bell tower. That's how communes work. This is one of the largest oil fields in Italy, Tempa Rossa. It was opened in 1989, but was not operated until 2013, 30 years later. Do you know why? In addition to the typical corruption scandals, over the years, a consortium of developers has been collecting about 400 official permits. Because in Italy, there are the same 4 levels of government: national, regional, provincial, and municipal. And even if the government in Rome gives the go-ahead for a very significant project, it doesn't mean anything. It is necessary to also come to an agreement with all the local residents in such communes. Or as they say in Italy, every village is a republic. Ogni paese una repubblica. Another example was in 2012, when British Gas refused to build a giant liquefied natural gas terminal near the Italian port of Brindisi. The reason? 11 years of bureaucratic struggle with the Italian authorities. Moreover, during this time, British gas companies will invest 250 million euros in the project and still abandon it. Why do Italians have so much power on the ground? First, look at what the country looked like at least 2 centuries ago. Many modern regions are essentially independent states. In the south there is the Kingdom of Naples and Sicily. To the west and north is the Kingdom of Sardinia. Separately, Tuscany with its capital in Florence. Lombardo is a Venetian kingdom, the duchies of Parma and Modena, and finally, the Papal region, headed by the Pope. Some will say, wait, that's already in the past. Italy is a united country now. Let's look at their national anthem. We have been for centuries stamped on and laughed at because we are not one people, because we are divided. Let's unite under one flag, one dream. To melt together, already the time has come. Why focus on the anthem? This is a great illustration of how Italians want to unite into a great and powerful country. But over the last 78 years, 70 governments have already changed in Italy. That is, on average, the government changes every 13 months. And on the other hand, Italy is about an incredible personality. Take a look at the most famous Italian clothing brands: Benetton, Gucci, Versace, Furla, Prada, Armani, Dolce & Gabbana. All these began as a family business. And do you know who is the richest man in Italy today? Giovanni Ferrero. In 2023, Forbes estimates his fortune at almost $39 billion. But he did not start the business himself. He received it from his father, Michele Ferrero. With him, the company will create world-famous products: Kinder Surprise, Raffaello, Ferrero Rocher, and TikTok. But Michele himself will also inherit the company from his father, Pietro Ferrero. And it was he who, immediately after World War II, patented a cheap hazelnut and cream paste and called it Nutella. And about 85% of businesses in Italy are like this, family-owned. The largest manufacturer of Italian cars, Fiat, is still owned by the Agnelli family. They are also the owners of the most popular and titled football club in the country, Juventus. And this is the world leader in sunglasses, Luxottica, owner of brands Ray-Ban, Persol, or Oakley Sports. They also make frames for luxury companies Chanel, Prada, and Armani. And a global monopoly will be created by Leonardo Del Vecchio. He took the company public before making it private again, and when Del Vecchio dies, 6 of his children inherit the business. And these are not isolated examples. Of the 100 oldest companies in the world that are still operating, 15 are Italian. For example, it is still possible to buy lamps made of blown Venetian glass from Berrovier and Tolso. The company has been producing it for 728 years. Florentine Torrini is considered the oldest jewelry company in the world, launching in 1369. And finally, wine from Marchesi Antinori. Since 2017, Albietta Antinori has been the president of the company. What is this notable for? She is the 26th generation of the ancient Florentine Antinori family, which has been selling excellent Italian wine since 1385. This means that stable laws have been enforced in society for centuries, which respect private property. However, family firms are much worse at investing in scientific research, and in the 21st century, this is vital. Look at the most expensive and successful Italian businesses. There is no high-tech there, because it's one thing to come up with a new design, to continue to produce the same models of glasses or cars, but it's quite another to create an innovative product. Look at this curious data on the values societies in European countries adhere to. The green is the part of the population for progress, development, and self-expression. That is, the more such people there is in a country, the more this country is focused on individual success and innovation. Evaluate what Italy's indicators are in this sense. Things are worse only in Bulgaria, which is also not very innovative. But there is a period in the country's history when both investments and innovations flowed like a river, also called the Italian economic miracle. Directly after the Second World War, the Italian economy is growing at an average of almost 6% per year. Only one country is developing faster at that moment, Japan. Where do these growth figures come from? To begin with, Italy will become one of the largest recipients of the Marshall Plan, where American loans come to Western European countries in order to restore the destroyed economies after World War II, and secondly, to weaken the influence of the USSR. In the same Italy, in the first parliamentary election, the communists and socialists collected an impressive 40 and 30% of the votes. By the way, remember this man, the leader of the Italian Communist Party. But for now, back to the economic miracle. Due to the rapid investments in industry, the workforce begins to move from rural regions to cities, and the largest enterprises will become a symbol of Italian industrialization. For example, the Italian automobile factory in Turin, better known to the world as Fiat. They receive subsidies from the state and begin to produce compact and affordable cars. See the famous Fiat Nuovo 500. The design of the car will be so popular that the factory will even re-release the car half a century later. Fiat sales are growing so rapidly that in the 60s and 70s, it becomes one of the largest automakers in Europe and will receive the European Car of the Year award 3 times. But Fiat is far from the only example of success at that time. It was in the post-war years that Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, Lamborghini, and Ducati rose. And now, look at the famous film Roman Holiday with Audrey Hepburn, released in '53. In fact, it is this that will advertise the iconic Vespa scooter to the world. Although the company appeared in the 19th century and initially produced ships and military aircrafts, after the war, it switches to things available to ordinary people. In 1952, Gucci was the first to enter the American haute couture market by launching his store in Manhattan. He is followed by Valentino, and then Prada, Versace, Benetton, Fendi, Dolce & Gabbana, Armani, and Moschino will come to the American market. But Italy in the middle of the 20th century is developing not only automakers and the world's main fashionistas. Household appliances, tires, typewriters, and pasta flood the world as well. But the most telling example is how the economic miracle will end up. This is it. Callisto Tanzi, a young milkman from Parma, will figure out how to store milk longer in the hot Italian climate and sell it to the whole world. He buys an innovative packaging and ultra-pasteurization line from the Swiss firm Tetra Pak. This is when milk is quickly heated to 150 degrees and then sharply cooled to 5. Most bacteria die, and the milk can be stored for several months instead of several days. The company also introduces the milk brick, convenient to transport, sell, and apply brand images to the entire surface. Today, you will find similar milk bricks in every store around the world. But then, it's the real breakthrough. You have already noticed that his company is called Parmalat, derived from the name of the city Parma and latte, which means milk in Italian. It will come to the point that Parmalat owned 148 factories in 31 countries in the early noughties. But in 2003, the company will go bankrupt with a debt of 14 billion euros. And at the same time, it was the largest bankruptcy in the history of Europe. And Tanzi himself will steal 800 million, for which he will be imprisoned for 18 years. As you can see, all the super successful companies that were born during the Italian economic miracle are no longer in leading roles today. Why is this happening? First, look at the Global Innovation Index. Even among the EU countries, Italy is not in the top 10. And this is despite the fact that Italy has been the third largest economy in Europe for many years. And second, exports. This is important because the desire to sell high quality but cheap things to the whole world is one of the main reasons for Italian success. Remember how local fashion will take over America? And conventional incandescent washing machines are found in many families around the world? Who will replace them? That's right, Korea. And where are the stylish and cheap Fiat cars now? Russia is reviving the production of the Moskvich car, but this is just a copy of the Chinese crossover JAC. And now we are moving back to the golden 60s and 70s for Italy. Here is the holder of the title European Car of the Year for 1967, Fiat 124. While here is the first car of the Volga automobile plant, the Soviet VAZ-2101. But this is not piracy or brazen plagiarism, but the result of the largest one-time transaction in the history of world foreign trade. The Soviet Union conducted it with Italian Fiat and other Western countries for $642 million at that time. With them, the USSR buys equipment to design not just a factory, but an entire city that will produce cars for the country of 250 million people. And they will call this city Togliatti. Remember when I asked you to hang on to the leader of the Italian Communist Party, Palmiro Togliatti? Yes, it is in his honor that the Volga Stavropol will be renamed. What's the point of this story? Firstly, it shows how much Italian technology was at the top then. After all, the USSR was trying to negotiate with the same Renault or Volkswagen, but chooses Fiat as the base. Still, not everyone can design such a large plant that'll produce 600,000 cars per year. And secondly, in the midst of the Cold War, neither the Germans nor the French are eager to help their enemy, but the Italians were ready to negotiate. Researchers of the history of Fiat write that the leadership of the Turin Corporation is in contact with both the head of the USSR and the US. Judge for yourself. 2 years before the contract, Vittorio Valletta will go to the White House 4 times. So, the deal with the Soviet Union is far from a bilateral USSR-Italy deal. Equipment for the Soviet car giant will be partially purchased in Germany, France, and at least 50 million in the United States. And here, the phrase attributed to Karl Marx fits very well. With 300% profits, there is no crime that a capitalist will not commit, even if he faces the gallows. In fact, the author of the statement is British publicist Thomas Dunning. Provide 10% and capital will agree to any use. At 20%, it becomes animated. At 50%, it positively breaks its head. At 100%, it tramples all human laws. At 300%, there is no crime it will not risk, even under the penalty of the gallows. Smuggling and slave trade prove this. Italy, of course, did not trade slaves with the USSR, but as history shows, no ideological differences are a hindrance to business. Moreover, the Soviet-Italian business will begin even before the deal with Fiat. And thanks to Enrico Mattei for that, in 1957 he became president of the state in the Italian state of the Eni Oil Company. Under him, the country became one of the main buyers of Soviet oil. Why is this happening? Because in the 50s, Mattei challenges the education of the Seven Sisters. That's what he would call the Anglo-Saxon companies, which at the time produced almost 85 to 90% of the world's oil. How does the Italian challenge them? Well look, when these Seven Sisters come to some poor country to extract oil, then their conditions are exclusively 50-50, as for example, in Iran at the time. That is, these companies take half as much of the profits for themselves. What does the Italian Eni do? He brings down the price and offers the governments of Egypt, Iran, Morocco, Libya, Sudan, Tunisia, and Nigeria much more profitable contracts. 25% for foreigners, and the remaining 75% remains in these countries. Eni is not afraid of its ties with the USSR either. On October 11, 1960, the company signed a 4-year contract with the Soviet Foreign Trade. According to it, Italy receives 12 million tons of oil and petroleum products, and the USSR receives synthetic rubber and, importantly, 240,000 tons of large-diameter pipes, very necessary to build Soviet oil pipelines. And Italy will become one of the first Western countries to supply an enemy with a strategic commodity. What did Washington think about this? In November of the same year, representatives of Standard Oil, together with the American Secretary of State, announced the oil offense of the USSR. Italy is falling into dangerous dependence on the Soviet state, and in general the State Department should influence the Italian government. But in fact, Mattei is acting in the national interest. His idea is to kill the American monopoly in Africa and Western Europe and partially replace it with Soviet oil. The Italians want to work there and build oil pipelines to Central Europe themselves and connect with the Soviets. On October 27, 1962, Mattei's plane will crash on its way to Milan. The first witness claims to have seen an explosion, but then retracts his words. A journalist investigating the incident suddenly disappears, and the disaster will be called an accident. But in '95, Mattei's body will be exhumed, a forensic examination will be carried out, and metal fragments from the explosion will be found in his bones, proving that the plane exploded rather than crashed due to bad weather. You can see for yourself how enormously important the role of personality in history is, especially in Italian history. Starting from the famous figures Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. In fact, they're the ones who will rebuild medieval Europe into a modern one. And of course, ending with the bright Italian politicians. Who comes to mind first? I think there are a few options here, about two, Mussolini and Berlusconi. Mussolini and Berlusconi. And both at the beginning of their careers will play on the very desire of the people to unite around a great country. Look at how beautifully the novice dictator Mussolini works bare-chested with the common people in the field with his hands. Mussolini will also end his life with the people. The Italians execute the long-term leader by hanging him upside down with his mistress. Berlusconi has never been a fascist or a dictator, but he awakens those very secret feelings of Great Italy. Do you know what slogan he goes for his first election? Forza Italia is actually the cry of football fans. That's what he will name his political party and win the election and become prime minister. However, at first, as it usually happens in Italy, for a short time, less than a year, but then he will take power for a total of 8 years. Do you know what is happening to the country at this time? In the international corruption rating, it is starting to sink lower and lower. And it's not even that Berlusconi himself is constantly under investigation. At first, he is accused of official crimes, including bribing judges or tax fraud. The problem is that his government is rewriting the laws to suit themselves. They reduce the statute of limitations on official offenses. In 2002, the maximum penalty for falsifying tax records was reduced, but this affects everyone, not just the politicians in charge. So what is corruption and how does it affect society and the economy? Just imagine, there is a government contract to build a road. It is worth a conditional $100 million, but in order to get this contract, the company must give the right officials a bribe, let's say 20%. Most likely, they will have to make up that 20% by cutting costs. They will buy worse raw materials and workers will be given less wages. What is the way out? They raise taxes a little so that next time they can definitely build a proper road. The taxpayers pay more money to the treasury, money they could be spending on themselves, buying goods from other people, entrepreneurs. What does society get as a whole? Consumption is falling, demand for other goods is decreasing, and economic growth is being held back. But most importantly, corruption kills competition. There are estimates by the Italian accounting chamber that corruption costs the country an amount that can cover all the interest on Italy's significant foreign debt. Italy is currently in the top 5 in the world's major debtors. The Italian national debt is 144% of GDP. In terms of how easy it is to do business in a particular country, Italy is on the same level as Romania, Kenya, Kosovo, and Chile. But this is not all. In such indicators as whether it's easy to take out a loan, pay taxes, how contracts are executed, or how easy it is to obtain building permits, Italy is at the level of Eswatini, Morocco, or Mozambique. Here, of course, you can blame the Italian Mafia. On one hand, there is organized crime in Italy, as is in many countries in the world. There are now 4 main clans in the country: the Neapolitan Camorra, the Sicilian Cosa Nostra. There is also the Calabrian Negratana, and the very few Sacra Corona Iutea. As you can see, they all come from poor regions of the Italian south. Each of the organizations consists of several thousand people and mostly are engaged in illegal activities, drug and human trafficking, weapons, etc. It is believed that the first mention of the word mafia was in 1865. It is at this moment that Italy unites into a single but weak state. The Northerners want a common country most of all, and it is they who send troops to the southern provinces. And there is rhetoric that organized crime was a response to the colonization of the South by the North. But in any case, as long as Italy is still alive, the Mafia is immortal. Italy is one of the leading European countries today, the most ancient of Western civilizations, huge intellectual heritage, and a strong but importantly diverse economy. Outwardly, it appears like the beauty of a hand-built Ferrari, but in reality, it has been moving forward at the speed of an old Fiat. There is both magnificent wealth and luxury, seated right next to extreme poverty and organized crime. And it is especially clear from the example of Italy that stable and properly functioning systems win. No matter how great and strong you were in the past, it's already in the past. Our tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are being written today.